Hi, all. Today we'll be learning about production possibility curve. Okay, so let's see what is a production possibility curve. It is also known as production possibility frontier, that is PPF, or production possibility boundary. So whenever you see these names, make sure you understand that it is the same production possibility curve. Okay, so why we need a production possibility curve? Because it shows the different combinations. Okay, it shows the different combinations of two goods that an economy can produce, and it is based on a given time period. Okay, so whenever we calculate anything in a particular economic concept, we'll be taking a time period. Okay, likewise, the PPC also shows different combinations of two goods, and it will be based on a given time period. Okay, so, before we drawing a PPC curve, we'll be assuming two things. First thing, the resources are fixed. Then only we can set a frontier here. Okay. And then the fixed level of technology. So now we are taking two cases, that is technology and resources. Both are fixed. Okay. So what is the basic case of PPC? So let's see, you can see a lot of things here, right? You can see a PPC curve, you can see commodity X, you can see commodity Y. So let's see what do they actually mean. So whenever you see a PPC curve, you should understand few things. First thing, there will be two commodities, and the resources for these two commodities will be the same thing. Okay, but the quantity will be different. So commodity X on the PPC curve shows the maximum amount or maximum number of commodity X that can be produced when we produce zero commodity Y. Okay, so when there is no production for commodity Y, this is the maximum amount of commodity X that can be produced with the same resources. Okay, also when you check this, okay, this is the point where we produce zero quantities of commodity X and the maximum quantity of commodity Y. So this is how we set the uh, limits for the curve. Okay, so these are the limits based on any number of resources or technology, etc. And this is how we draw the curve. Okay, once we draw the curve, we can see a lot of things on the curve, right? So let's see what are they. So increasing production of one good reduces the production of another. Okay, reduces the production of another. Let's see how does that happen. So we already mentioned that when there is no production for commodity X, we can produce this much quantity. Okay, let it be 100. Okay, so let's take it as 100. So 100 quantities of commodity Y. And for commodity X, if there is no production for commodity Y, we can produce around 80 quantities of commodity X. So that is the maximum number of commodities that can be produced with the full resources. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now I can use any of the combinations on the curve. Okay, any of the combinations are possible. So now I'm going to make around, let's say this is 80, and let's take this one as like 60 or something. Okay, and I'm taking this one as 60 and this one as 4. Okay, let's assume like this. So I decided to produce 80 units of commodity Y. Okay, so this will be the point, right? And then how many quantities of X I can produce? Around 60, right? Only 60. Is it clear? So this will be the quantity. And I decided to produce 60 units of quantity commodity Y. Okay, so how many quantities of X I can produce? I can produce the full, that is 8. And I decided to produce 100 units of commodity Y. So only 40 units of commodity X is possible. So no matter how many quantities I produce for each, the other one will reduce or increase accordingly. Okay. So increasing production of one good means reduce the production of another. Okay, so this happens because of the resources are limited. So whenever we learn economics in the basic program, we always mention that the resources are scarce, right? And our needs and wants are unlimited. So due to the limited resources, no matter how many things we produce or what are the combinations that we use, still we have a limitation. Okay. Even though our technology is advanced, even though we have more labors, whatever it is, all the resources, okay, that are limited. Okay. So, the movement from one point to another, that shows the reallocation of resource. Okay. So, from X to Y, the resource allocation is clearly stated. Okay. So, for example, to produce 100 units of commodity Y, I need around, let's take it as 10 labors. Okay. Let's assume it is 10 labor. So, 10 labors, and it will take me around 20 capital, 20 units of capital. Okay. So, let's take it like that. Okay. So, 20 units of capital. And for producing 60 or 80 units, I need around, let's take it as six. Okay, six labors and around 15 units of capital. Okay, so this shows the reallocation, right? So, what is the total labor we have? 10. And what is the total capital we have? 20. Okay, and for 80 units of commodity X, also maximum will be 10 labors and 20 units of capital. Okay. So whenever we use 10 for commodity X and 20 for commodity Y. Okay. So both we use for Y. So it will be 0 and 0 here. Right. And at the same time, when I decided to reduce it, okay, to 6 labors and 15K. So how many resources will be allocated for commodity X? It will be 4 labor and 5 units of capital. Okay. So this is how from each point the resource allocation is properly showcased. Okay. So increase in the production of one good reduces the production of another. Also the movement from one point to another. It shows the reallocation of resources. See how the resources are reallocated here. So it does not mean economic growth. Okay, it does not mean economic growth. It only shows the different combinations of all. So the PPC curve is only showing you the different combinations of output. Okay, so it's not showing any sort of economic. Okay, and as a basic thing, you can see that the PPC curve, right? The PPC curve is, you can easily spot it as concave to origin, right? It's concave to origin. See, this is how the curve looks, right? So it is concave to the origin. Why? Because the resources are not equally efficient. So we have already mentioned, right? With the 10 unit of labors and the 20 units of capital, I could make 100 units of commodity Y. But with the same 10 unit of labor and 20 unit of capital, how many units of commodity X I could make? I could make only 80. Okay. So resources are not equally efficient. Okay. So this is what we have to learn about PPC curve as a basics. Okay. Now, now let's learn about points on PPC. Okay. So you could have see a lot of points here, right? Point X is there, point Y is there, point Z is there. Okay. So what does this points shows? Any idea? So when the point is on the curve, okay, when the point is on the curve, like X, Y, Z, etc., they are efficient, okay, which means full employed. So when the points are on the curve, it is efficient. And once it is inside the curve, okay, so what are the efficient points here? The efficient points from this particular graph is X, Y, and Z, right? These are X, Y, and Z. Okay. And if it is inside the curve, okay, inefficient. Okay. So we are not properly utilizing the available resources. Okay. See, this is how the graph will look like. So we are not utilizing the proper resources. A lot of resources are wasted. Okay. So it can be due to unemployment or underuse of resources. Okay. So inside the curve, the inefficient points are, what are the inefficient points here? It's point A. Okay. And outside the curve, we have a point outside the curve, right? That is point C. That is currently unattainable. Okay. Currently unattainable. So that is point C here. So what do you mean by currently unattainable? What does that mean? So basically, even if I wanted to attain, but I don't have the resources for that. For example, let's take the example like the total number of labor I have is 10. Total number of capital I have is 20. Okay. So what are the maximum points I could attain? Point X, point Y, point Z of different quantities of commodity X and Y. What if I need to attain C? I need around at least like 15 units of labor and 30 units of capital. And now I don't have that. So can I make the production? No. So that is why it remains as unattainable. Okay. So these are the points on PPC. So if it is attainable or not attainable will be based on the position on the curve. Okay. If it is inside the curve, it is inefficient. If it is on the curve, it is efficient. And if it is outside the curve, it is unattainable. Okay. So no matter not about this XYZ, okay, whatever be the point on the curve, you can take any number of points like this. See, all are possible. Okay. All are possible. All will give you different points of or combinations of commodity X and Y. See, all these are possible. Any number of combinations are possible. Okay. The point should be on the curve. Okay, like this. Is that clear? Okay. Now let's see some concept associated with the PPC. First thing is law of diminishing returns. So as more inputs are added, output increases at a decreasing rate. It will lead to increasing opportunity cost. So what do you mean by opportunity cost? What is opportunity cost? So it is a cost related to alternative choices, right? For example, you have two choices. You can pick either A or B. So that is the loss of the next best alternative. If you pick A, you lose B, right? So that is the loss of next best alternative, the cost of next best alternative. Okay, for example, in the PPC, we mentioned about two commodities, right? X and Y. So if you choose to make more Y, you lose some quantities of X. That is your opportunity cost. Okay. So for example, here we are mentioning about the inputs. Okay. So, if I'm adding, for example, with 10 labors, okay, 10 labors and 20 capital, I could make 100 units. Okay, I could make 100 units of any commodity X or Y. Let's take it as well. And I decided to employ few more labors so that I could make more production. Okay. And I employed 15 with a capital like around 25. Okay. I could make around 110 units. Okay. So when it is 20 labors and 30 units of capital, I could make around 115 units. Okay. So with 10 labors, I was able to produce 100. But 20 labors, I'm only able to produce 150. So the output is increasing but a decreasing rate, right? Even though the quantity has increased, but the average productivity of the input is decreased, which will create loss in the long run or in the short run as well. So we have opportunity cost type. Okay, we mentioned about opportunity cost, right? So we have some types of that. What are they? Constant opportunity cost. So if there is constant opportunity cost, the PPC would be a straight line. Okay, so it's a theoretical concept. For example, instead of this curve, okay. So now our PPC is like this, right? So instead of that, it will look like costs. Okay. So that's a theoretical conceptual. And then increasing opportunity cost. That is our real world, the curved. Okay. So have you ever thought why increasing opportunity cost? Why the opportunity cost is increasing? Why is that so? Because the factors of production are not equally suitable. Okay. So using less efficient resources will cost you but the higher cost. Okay. So it leads to higher marginal cost. Okay, that is why the opportunity cost is increasing. Okay. Now let's discuss another important point, that is shift in PPC. What does shift in PPC? So the entire curve shift, okay, the economic growth or decline. So when the entire curve, we have an entire curve here, right? It can either shift to right or left. So based on the left or right shift, it will showing some economic growth or decline. So not the same as the movement along the curve. So when the curve was moving, like when the lines were or the combinations are moving on the curve, like different combination, that doesn't affect the economic growth or the any recession, nothing like that, right? But the entire curve, when the entire curve is shifting, it will have an impact. Let's see the shift. So as I mentioned, we have two type of shift, right? That is rightward and the left. So let's see the rightward shift. Okay. When the curve is shifting rightward, which means the curve will expand. So the shift will be like this. Okay. So the economy can produce more of both goods. See, now for example, the initial quantity was 100 and it was 80, the maximum. Okay, now we can produce around 150 and let's take it as 120. Okay. So now the quantity of both can be, both is increased, right? So this indicates the increase in productive capacity. So like when a new technologies or more efficient resources are available, so the productivity can be increased. So let's see what could be the causes for that. First thing, improvement in technology. Okay, when the technology is improved. So, for example, more like effective machines are introduced. Okay, so instead of producing like 10 units or 100 units per day, now it can produce, the improved machine can produce 120 or 150 units per day. And increase in labors. Okay, so more labors are available. There is no unemployment or more labors are available and invest in capital. Okay, so when the investment in capital increases, okay, the owner buys more productive machines or new technologized machines, etc. It can improve the productivity and better education and training. So the human capital, right? So whenever we are educated, when we learn about new technologies or new ways of production, so that can also increase the productivity and discovery of new resources. So initially in our country, like for example, let's take the case of any commodity. Okay, let's take the case of sugar. Sugar. Okay, so for sugar, you need sugar cane, right? Sugar cane and the labors are needed or the machines are needed. So we only had around like 100 acres or something like that here. Okay, or 50 acres of sugar cane land here. And so the resources are limited, right? No matter how efficient your machines are, since the input, the sugar canes are limited, you can only make up to that, right? The result will be just based on the sugar cane. So now we got another resource. We can import sugar canes for sugar production or whatever it is. Okay, this is just an example. So now the resource is increased, right? The amount of the quantity of sugar canes are improved. So the discovery of new resources. It can be, you can take any examples like mines, any metal mines or metal ores, whatever have discovered. Okay, so the initial amount of resources is increased. Then improved management. So proper management. So when the management is more efficient, it will also lead to an increase in the or improvement in the production. And then government support for business. So whenever the government provides you some subsidies or some relaxations or some other incentives and all, that will also boost the production. So the curve will shift to right. And the curve can also shift to left, right? So let's see this. So when the curve is shifting left, this is how it will. Okay, the curve is now contracted. So it will show the reduce or decreased economic growth, right? Because the production of both goods has decreased. What could be the causes? First thing is immigration. Okay, so like nowadays, more people are migrating to different countries, right? So when the people are immigrating from a particular country, the labor force in that particular country will decrease. As a result, the resources for the production will also be reduced. So that could be a reason. And then decrease in labor supply, right? So when the people are not willing to work, so the labor supply will reduce. For education investment, so there is no proper infrastructure for education like schools, colleges, nothing are available, and most of the people are illiterate. So definitely the people won't have the skill, right? So the production can be reduced and loss of resources due to any natural calamities or anything else. The resources are destroyed or not available like before. So it can also reduce the production. So as a result, the curve can shift to left. Okay. So these are the important points related to PPC.